Welcome back to day 4 of the Washington Journalism and Media Conference held at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. I'm Max Columbus, and today I woke up, got dressed in professional gear before heading down to breakfast, and then after eating some breakfast, we split off into color groups to work on the pitch simulation, which we vaguely talked about yesterday of what makes a good pitch, what is needed in a good pitch, to come up with something on mental health. I worked with Sarah and we were both state reporters, and our prompt, or the story of us as reporters, had to do with Virginia's governor repeatedly highlighting the importance of expanding mental health resources and campaigned on that, but when it actually became time to enact some of his policies, he or she focused more on law enforcement and public safety initiatives, and it made people angry knowing they accepted this person to be their governor and that what was promised didn't occur. Now, let me just let you know, this is not a true narrative. This is just the prompt, but because we're in Virginia for the conference, that's why it's Virginia. So, for our headline, Virginia's unbalanced approach in handling mental health. Now, it took us about 25 to 30 minutes to come up with that, but before we did that, we were talking about personal experiences. People in her community, people in my community, what our schools do. Our schools are relatively the same in size. Sarah has probably about 500 more students, but the idea of mental health being such an important topic to both of us, and some of her experiences. We were also talking about religious experiences too, and how some of those shaped this theme. While we were doing this, if we could actually write the article, we would talk about statistics because we think that would connect people, but we also want to talk about people's experiences, those who may have been in distress, or those who unfortunately were no longer here. However, mental health is a big problem, especially with young adults and teens. So if you are having a mental health crisis, know there are resources available. There's the 988 number or many other resources. I'll link some of them, but we wrote, Virginia governor claims mental health is a pressing issue in the state, but won't allocate funds in the final budget to address this topic. That very little info, we were able to pitch that to 5 news organizations that were made up for this exercise. The people that weren't reporters or creating these stories were the news organizations. Now, while we were talking to the news organizations, we felt 3 of the 5 could really work for us. One of them was a podcast that had to do with humor, and we didn't exactly feel like humor is an okay way to address this, at least in our opinions. So we were kind of already unsure about that one and not thinking about it. There was another one that wanted to talk about accuracy and justice. There was one that wanted local news with an adult audience. There was one that wanted a family focus. Unfortunately, that source we couldn't publish to in the podcast because breaking news came and we didn't offer the humor part. However, there was one one that wanted to talk about school, local policy, crime, and professionalism. So the ones we thought we were going to publish to, we did. And after the simulation, which really was a great simulation, we both learned a lot and had some really interesting discussions. We boarded some of the buses to head to the National Press Club after we went to lunch, and while we were there, we heard from Carmela Boykin, who's a social media editor for the Washington Post, and while we were there, she talked about how some of her hobbies and how she got to where she was, joining a traditional market, doing traditional things. But in COVID, as trends started to move towards the digital age, she wanted to add in her own style with a little humor and breaking it down so there's the other way to get news. She talked about how different things will do better on different platforms. But originally, when she joined as a TikTok reporter, she was solely TikTok, and she said, let's reach more audiences. She talked about her hobbies, her advice about cold DMs. You know, sometimes just reaching out to someone and saying, hey, this is what I do, or I applied for this, what are your thoughts? Because knowing the people you work with can make a difference when someone's trying to get in, if they have advice. I also talked to Miss Boykin on her experience being a competitive dancer when she was younger, and how she was able to take some of those skills she learned from that and theater to her world of journalism. It definitely helped, and how her friends encouraged her. She's just talked about finding a good friend group, that theater was very good for public speaking, and that the dancing also helped with the confidence, and also being a fellow Michigander, good things. Apparently, West Bloomfield always beat her in forensics. That's another thing. Then we got to hear from Devlin Barrett, who's part of the New York Times, and he talked a lot about the FBI and how he started as a copy boy and the people he's met and the experiences he's had covering the administration, where, you know, he may have started with one or two stories where he was writing those, but now he's on to 8 a week just because of what's happening. He was very personable in that he was sharing stories with people he's met along the way, and it was quite interesting to hear. So after the National Press Club, we were given the go-ahead to change into more casual clothing. I'm wearing khakis and a polo instead of the suit that I wore. After dinner, got to hear from Patrick Money, who's the director of admissions for freshman recruitment at George Mason, which was very interesting, where he was talking a lot about the college search and why applying early is better than late. You know, you're able to get more scholarships through the university, or how you're not necessarily committed to picking versus if you apply later. He also gave the advice of doing your homework, and that it's okay not to know, but you just gotta try and communicate. So go on these tours. When you go, yeah, a rep is gonna sell you on it, or they may tell you why that they have a program that's not actually the program you're looking for, but instead try to get you, just to get you in the door. So ask them the why. Ask them why it's the best. Not, do you have this and what is it? Ask them why they have behind it, what it stands for. Because some universities, you may want to have this big school that's an amazing school, but you could go to somewhere so much smaller and get a better education because professors were in the field. So it was quite interesting to hear his perspectives on that and how this all worked. And then we went back to our color groups to talk about tomorrow as we're going to DC. I'm not going to spare the details, but it was more of a logistics and planning, being with a buddy from the conference and kind of just how that all works. And then we played Color Feud. It's a lot like Family Feud, except it had to do with us playing against all the color groups. We'd answer questions about what a journalist would bring, what's needed to be a successful national youth correspondent, questions like that we've been learning. So it was quite an interesting game. Unfortunately, Teal team didn't win, but Team Teal 6 versus everyone, always. But congrats to the purple team for winning and all the other teams. And there was a lot of screaming involved and encouraging our team, so that's why my voice is a little sore. But it was a fun day, fun time. Can't believe it's coming to an end. It feels like it went by like this. I've met some amazing people, but there's still 2 more days to enjoy it. And there's always memories we'll take along even when I'm not physically here. So thank you, and we'll see you for day 5 tomorrow. But for now, I'm Max Columbus. We'll see you soon.